This is not a comprehensive guide to linear programming, but just some of the key points. You need to make sure that you've worked through the textbook to look at how you write inequalities from words. Once you've got your equations, though, there are 3 different types of graphs you may have to plot. Graphs of the form AX plus BY equals C. For this, use the cover-up method, which means that you plot 2 points on the axes. So you cover up the X and find out the Y value on the axis, cover up the Y, find the X value on the axis. You can also get equations that are in the form y equals ax plus b or x equals ay plus b, and for these you can't use the cover-up method so easily, so just do a table of values and plot 3 points. Again, look back through your notes or the textbook or My Maths to check how to do that. And then finally, the horizontal and vertical graphs that you need to recognise that are either the form x equals a number or y equals a number for the horizontal graph. So those are the 3 different sorts of lines that you will need to plot. Very important in linear programming is that there are things you need to check as you go along, because you'll lose marks if you get these wrong, but they're very easy to miss. So when you've drawn any lines, you must check, should it be a dashed line or a blocked line? A dashed line is where it is a strict inequality, so it cannot be equal to. And that phrase, strict inequality, is very important. So where it can't be equal to, it's called a strict inequality, and it's a dashed line. A blocked line is where it can also be equal to. The majority of questions have lines where it's greater than or equal to, less than or equal to, but you must learn that phrase, strict inequality. So, first thing you do is you check, have you done dashed or blocked lines correctly? Second thing to check, once you've drawn your graph, are all the lines labelled clearly with the equation. If you don't label every single line, you potentially lose marks. And then the third thing to check, have you labelled your region R? Very, very easy to miss, but if you miss labelling it R, you will lose a mark. And the fourth thing to check, non-negativity constraints. Have you shaded, written, included on the diagram drawn, x is greater than or equal to 0 or y is greater than or equal to 0? Pretty much every question you do, those non-negativity constraints will apply. So your fourth check is, have you taken account of that? So 4 checks when you've drawn the graph: dashed or blocked line, lines labelled, region labelled R, non-negativity constraints. You then move on to finding the optimal point or the optimal value. And on these things that you need to check, first of all, check, has it specified a method? If it tells you to do the vertex method or the objective line method, you must use a method that they tell you. And the check 2, have you made sure that it's the maximum or the minimum? It will usually tell you whether you need to maximise a function or minimise. Make sure you've picked the right value. So for the vertex method, you must test all the points. If you miss even just 1 point, you will lose the marks, because the vertex method is about checking every single point. So go round the shape and make sure you pick up every point. I would label them as you go, A, B, C, D. And if you draw a table for it, then it's much easier to make sure you've included them all. And in your table, you need to record the x value at the point, the y value at the point, and then the value of the objective function. To find the x and y value, you might have to use simultaneous equations to find the coordinates. Sometimes you can tell them straight from the graph, but if it's not clear from the graph, then simultaneous equations. And the working for that can go underneath your table. The next thing with any of these questions, vertex method or the objective line, is to make sure that you've answered the question in the correct part. So if part B asks you to find the number of whatever it is that needs to be produced, that's the x and y value. And then if part C says give the maximum profit made, that will be the value from your table. So make sure that you've answered the right thing in the right part of the question, because again, in decision maths, if you don't do that, you will lose marks. You can't just do all the question in one, including all the answers. You need to really be specific. The objective line method, things to check: Draw your objective line. If you're not sure how to do that, check on the My Maths lesson. Make sure you've drawn your objective line and that you've labelled it. So your check is, have you labelled your objective line? You then only need to find one set of coordinates and the value, because your objective line helps you to identify which one. Again, you may need to use simultaneous equations. So you don't need to do all the points like you do in the vertex method, but you need to have drawn and labelled your objective line, and then you need to find the x and y value and the value of the objective function for the 1 point. Double check again, is it the minimum you want or the maximum you want? Make sure you've picked the right point. And then finally, just make sure that when you give your answers, the final check is, have you used the context of the question? Very often they want you to refer to what x and y stand for. So it's not enough always to say x equals 3. You need to say the number of red flowers is equal to 3, the number of blue flowers produced is equal to 7. So check the context of the question and check whether they want a specific answer as well as a numerical value.